Alright, so this just happened, and I'm still processing it, but I need to get it off my chest. You ever have one of those days where you wake up feeling like it's gonna be a good one, only for the universe to absolutely body slam you into the pavement? Yeah. That was me today. For context, I, 26M, have been running with a small group of friends every Saturday morning for the past couple of years. It's nothing too serious, just a way to stay in shape and catch up. We usually do a 5K through this big park in our city, and afterward, we grab coffee and talk about everything from work to whatever stupid drama is happening in our lives. It's chill. At least, it was chill. This morning, it was me, my best friend Jake, 27M, and my coworker Evan, 28M. My girlfriend, Sophie, 25F, sometimes joins us, but she had brunch plans with her friends, so it was just the guys today. No big deal. We start running, cracking jokes, talking about weekend plans, totally normal stuff. But then, about halfway through, something weird happened. Jake suddenly slowed down and glanced over his shoulder, looking uneasy. At first, I thought he was just tired, but then Evan did the same thing. I was about to ask what was up when I noticed it too. This guy in a dark hoodie was following us. Now, I get it, it's a public park, people run all the time, but this guy wasn't running. He was staying with us, always a few steps behind, never passing, never falling too far back. And here's the part that sent a chill down my spine. Every time one of us glanced at him, he looked away like he wasn't watching us at all. I felt my stomach drop. Something was off. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just pacing himself weirdly. Maybe he had a similar route. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then Jake muttered under his breath, "You guys seeing this?" Evan, who's usually the most laid-back dude I know, nodded without even looking back. Yeah. Been watching him since the last turn. That's when I really started paying attention. We weren't on some main street where runners flooded the sidewalk. We were deep in the park, on a narrow trail that wound through a bunch of trees. This wasn't a spot where people just happened to be going the same way. And the longer we ran, the weirder it got. The guy wasn't dressed like a runner, he had on jeans, the hood of his sweatshirt pulled low over his face, and I swear he wasn't even breaking a sweat. Something about him was wrong. I made the executive decision to change our route. Usually, we loop around and end back at the coffee shop, but I turned toward an exit that led to a busier street, hoping that if this dude was actually following us, he'd either drop off or we'd at least be around more people. Jake and Evan didn't ask questions. They followed my lead, picking up the pace. And that's when Hoodie Guy sped up too. Not jogging. Not power walking. He sprinted. Straight for us. I felt my stomach flip, and for a split second, my brain refused to process what was happening. But then Jake yelled, "Run!" And we ran. I've never run faster in my life. This wasn't our usual Saturday morning jog anymore, this was fight or flight, and flight was winning by a mile. Jake was ahead, Evan right beside me, and I could hear the heavy footsteps of Hoodie Guy gaining on us. What the hell does he want? Evan gasped between breaths. I didn't have an answer. My only thought was get to people, get to safety, don't let him catch you. The park exit was maybe 300 meters ahead, leading to a busy intersection. If we could just make it there, we'd be fine. I kept pushing, legs burning, lungs on fire. Then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. A second set of footsteps. I risked a glance over my shoulder, big mistake. There was another guy. This one had come from a side path, dressed almost exactly the same. Hoodie up, face low, moving fast. Two of them. I shouted. Jake cursed and veered left, toward a break in the trees. It wasn't the way out of the park, but it was an opening, a chance to shake them. Evan and I followed without question. And then came the worst part. The first guy, Hoodie number 1, laughed. Not like a chuckle. Not like he was out of breath. A low, creepy, knowing laugh. And in that moment, I realized something awful. This wasn't random. This wasn't some weird coincidence. We were being hunted. We crashed through the trees like panicked animals, branches whipping at our faces and legs. The park trail was gone, and now we were running blind through uneven ground, dodging roots, and trying not to trip. Jake was in full survival mode, leading the charge. Evan was right behind him, but I was starting to fall back. My legs were burning, my lungs felt like they were going to explode, and worst of all, those guys were still behind us. I didn't dare look back again, but I could hear them. Fast. Unbothered by the rough terrain. Like they'd done this before. What the hell do they want? Evan yelled again. No one had an answer. We broke through a clearing, and that's when things got worse. Dead end. A steep drop, maybe 10 feet down, into a dry creek bed lined with rocks. Too high to jump without risking a broken ankle. Too late to turn around. Jake skidded to a stop. Shit. Shit, shit, shit. We spun around just as hoodie number 1 emerged from the trees, grinning like this was all a fun little game. Hoodie number 2 wasn't far behind, blocking the only other way out. Trapped. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. I didn't know what they wanted, I didn't know if they had weapons, I didn't know if they were about to mug us or something way worse. But I knew one thing. We had nowhere to go. And then hoodie number 1 took a step closer. Damn, he said, shaking his head. You guys are fast. I don't know what I expected him to say, but it wasn't that. You guys are fast. Like this was some kind of race. Like this was fun for him. Evan was breathing hard, hands on his knees, but he still managed to snap. What the hell do you want, man? Hoodie number 1 tilted his head, like he was genuinely thinking about it. Hoodie number 2 stayed quiet, standing a few feet back, blocking our only escape route. Jake, ever the hothead, took a step forward. Listen, dude. If you're trying to rob us, take our wallets and get it over with. If not, walk away. Hoodie number 1 smirked. Rob you? He actually laughed, shaking his head. Nah, man. It's not about that. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. He wasn't out of breath. Neither of them were. We'd been running full speed for almost a mile, tearing through trees, sprinting for our lives, and these guys looked like they'd just taken a casual stroll. Something was very wrong. Jake must have sensed it too because his fists clenched. Then what's it about? Hoodie number 1 smirk widened. The chase. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Hoodie number 2 finally spoke, voice low and even. You almost made it out. My mouth went dry. Almost? What the hell did that mean? Before I could ask, hoodie number 1 reached into his hoodie pocket. Jake and Evan tensed immediately. I don't know if we were expecting a knife, a gun, something. But what he pulled out was worse. A stopwatch. He clicked it, checked the time, and grinned. New record. That's when I realized. This wasn't random. This wasn't a mugging. This was a game. And we were just the latest players. My brain short-circuited. A stopwatch? A record? This wasn't some random attack. These guys had done this before. Jake wasn't having it. What the hell are you talking about? His voice was sharp, but I could hear the strain beneath it. The fear. Hoodie number 1 ignored him. He turned to hoodie number 2 and nodded. Call it in. Call what in? Hoodie number 2 pulled out a phone, dialed a number, and said just 2 words. They're caught. I felt a chill so deep it locked my muscles. This wasn't just a game. It was organized. Evan took a step back, eyeing the cliff behind us. Dude, he muttered under his breath. We might have to jump. I glanced down. It was a 10-foot drop, but the landing was all jagged rocks and tree roots. Best case scenario, we'd get banged up. Worst case? We'd snap an ankle and be completely helpless. But staying here felt worse. Hoodie number 1 tucked the stopwatch away inside. All right, boys. Time's up. He started walking toward us. And that's when we heard it. A deep, rumbling sound. Like an engine. My stomach turned. Something was coming. Evan didn't wait to find out what. "Screw this," he yelled. And he jumped. Evan didn't hesitate. 1 second he was beside me, the next, he was gone. I barely had time to process before I heard the sickening thud of his landing. A grunt of pain. Then silence. Jake and I locked eyes. No time to think. No time to plan. We jumped. The air rushed past me, and for a split second, I was weightless, then boom, I hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Rocks dug into my side. Pain shot up my ankle. But nothing felt broken. Jake wasn't so lucky. He landed badly, crumpling onto his arm with a sharp cry. "Shit," he gritted his teeth, clutching his wrist. "I think it's sprained." No time to deal with it. Above us, hoodie number 1 peered down from the cliffside, hands on his hips like we were misbehaving kids. "Damn," he called out. "You really don't want to play, huh?" Then, from somewhere behind him, headlights appeared. A black SUV rolled up on the trail, engine low and growling. Doors opened. I didn't stick around to see who was inside. "Run!" I grabbed Jake's good arm, dragging him up as Evan stumbled ahead. We tore through the creek bed, slipping on loose stones, ducking under branches. Behind us, I heard footsteps hitting the dirt, fast and relentless. They were coming. And then another sound. A goddamn whistle. Long, sharp. Like a signal. And that's when I knew. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The whistle echoed through the trees, sharp and deliberate. It wasn't random. It wasn't some hiker in the distance. It was a signal. And whatever it meant, we weren't waiting around to find out. Evan was ahead, limping but moving fast. Jake gritted his teeth, clutching his wrist as we tore through the creek bed. I could still hear the SUV idling above us, its headlights cutting through the dark trees. The footsteps behind us hadn't slowed. They were tracking us. Hoodie number 1's voice called out, casual as ever. "You guys should really stop running." No chance in hell. I had no idea where we were going, just deeper into the woods, away from the road, away from whatever group was hunting us. Then Evan cursed. "Damn it, stop, stop." I skidded to a halt beside him. Another dead end. The creek bed ended at a chain-link fence, tall and topped with barbed wire. Beyond it, the land sloped downward into what looked like an abandoned construction site. Too high to climb. No way around. Jake wheezed. "Are you kidding me?" Footsteps crunched closer behind us. Then another sound. Not running. Not whistling. Something metallic. A click. And my stomach turned ice cold. I didn't want to believe it. But I knew that sound. A gun. "We gave you a head start," hoodie number 2 said. His voice was calm. Too calm. Hoodie number 1 sighed like he was actually disappointed. "Man, you really should have made it out." I turned to Jake and Evan, panic clawing at my throat. There was no way out. And we were about to find out what happened to the ones who lost this game. My body locked up. The air felt thick, heavy, like the whole forest was pressing down on me. A gun. They had a gun. This wasn't just some twisted chase anymore. This was life or death. Jake, still cradling his injured wrist, muttered under his breath, "We're screwed." Evan's eyes darted around, desperate for a way out. The fence was too high. The drop on the other side looked steep as hell. And behind us, those two psychos, closing in, completely at ease. I could barely hear over the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. Then, hoodie number 1 did something that made my stomach flip. He tossed the gun to the ground. Just dropped it in the dirt like he didn't even need it. And he smiled. "We don't use those unless we have to," he said, stepping forward. "Takes the fun out of it." Hoodie number 2 cracked his neck. Besides, this part's better up close. Jake whispered, "Oh, hell no." I knew what was coming. They weren't here to kill us from a distance. They wanted to do it with their hands. Fight or die. Evan moved first. He grabbed a rock, the biggest one he could find, and hurled it straight at Hoodie number 2's face. Crack! The guy stumbled back with a grunt of pain, and that was our chance. I didn't think, I just acted. I grabbed Jake and shoved him toward the fence. Climb! He hesitated, but I was already moving, boosting Evan up first. Adrenaline erased the pain. We scrambled, pulling at the cold metal, trying to clear it before. Boom! Something slammed into me from behind. I barely had time to process before I hit the ground hard, my head bouncing off the dirt. Hoodie number 1 was on top of me. Grinning. Gotcha. And that's when I knew. I wasn't getting out of this fight. Hoodie number 1 had me pinned, his weight pressing down on my chest. My head was spinning from the fall, my ears ringing. I struggled, twisting, trying to buck him off, but he was strong. Way stronger than I expected. Above me, he grinned. "You put up a good run, man." I swung. Didn't think, didn't aim, just pure survival instinct. My fist connected with his jaw, and for a split second, his grin dropped. I used that moment to shove him off and scramble back to my feet. Evan was already over the fence. He turned, eyes wide. "Come on, come on." Jake was halfway up, wincing as he climbed with his messed up wrist. I lunged for the fence. But Hoodie number 1 grabbed my ankle. Yanked me back so hard I hit the ground again. Pain exploded up my spine. Jake shouted my name, but there was nothing he could do. And that's when Hoodie number 1 finally dropped the act. No more jokes. No more smug smiles. His face twisted into something dark. "You don't get it," he hissed, his breath hot against my ear. "You think this is just some random attack? That we just picked you for fun?" His grip tightened. "You were chosen." My blood went cold. What the hell did that mean? Behind him, Hoodie number 2 was getting back up, wiping blood from his face where Evan's rock had hit him. They weren't done. They weren't stopping. And I was out of time. So I did the only thing I could. I grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it in his eyes. He roared in pain, hands flying up to his face, just enough of a distraction for me to break free. I didn't think. I just ran at the fence, leaped up, grabbed the metal. And that's when I heard it. A new sound. A third voice. From somewhere deeper in the woods. Low. Amused. "Looks like they almost got away." I froze. There were more of them. I didn't have time to process what just happened. My heart was pounding, my legs like jelly, but I didn't have the luxury of stopping. I climbed the fence with everything I had left, using every ounce of adrenaline in me. Behind me, I could hear Hoodie number 1 growling, wiping dirt from his eyes, but I didn't dare look back. I was over the fence, and Jake and Evan were right behind me. We were free, for now. But we weren't safe. As I landed on the other side, I heard the voice again, closer this time. "You really think you can just leave?" It was low, mocking, like they weren't even sweating this. And then came a laughter deep and unsettling. I froze. The voice came from the trees to the right. Another person. "Guys, we need to go. Now." I gasped. I turned to Jake and Evan, but their faces were as pale as mine. We didn't have a plan. We didn't have a map. We had nothing except our legs and the terror flooding my veins. "Where are they?" Evan hissed, his eyes darting between the trees, the road, anywhere that might give us a chance. Then I heard it, footsteps in front of us. A third figure stepped out from the shadows, a tall woman in a black jacket and a mask covering her face. "Your time's up," she said calmly, her voice smooth and cold. "You've been marked." I glanced around, panic making my chest tight. We were surrounded. No escape. The road was behind us, but it was too far. Too open. We didn't sign up for this, Jake shouted, his voice cracking. We're not part of your, whatever this is. The woman tilted her head, almost like she was amused. Everyone's a player in the end, she said. You're just lucky you're still breathing. And then she stepped back, motioning toward the trees where I could hear the sound of engines growing louder. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. My mind raced as the realization hit me, this wasn't some sick joke. We weren't just running from a couple of psychos. We were being hunted. And there was no way out. The woman in the black jacket, who I now realized wasn't just some random player, but a key part of whatever twisted game was unfolding, motioned to the SUV that had parked behind us. The headlights from the vehicle illuminated the woods, casting long shadows that felt like they were closing in on us. Jake, breathing hard, finally spoke, his voice shaking. What do you want from us? The woman stared at him like he was a bug she could squash without thinking. She didn't answer at first, just studied us, like we were pieces in a puzzle she was trying to figure out. And then she spoke, coldly, like she was reading from a script. You've been chosen for something bigger than you realize. The hunt. The game. It's not about survival anymore. It's about winning. Winning what? I managed to choke out, feeling a bitter mix of anger and terror rising in my throat. What the hell is this? The rules are simple, she continued, her voice a cruel monotone. You run, you survive, but eventually, you make it to the final stage, where the winners earn their freedom. That hit me like a punch to the gut. Freedom? Evan spat. You mean we're supposed to survive? She cut him off, her tone sharp. And compete. This isn't some random attack. You're not victims, you're players in a game you agreed to without realizing it. My head spun. We never agreed to anything. She shrugged, indifferent. You were chosen. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. You might not remember signing up, but the game has its ways. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I could do was stare at her in disbelief. They will be coming soon, she added, stepping back. And if you want to make it, you better start running. Because when it starts, it doesn't stop until it's finished. And with that, she turned, disappearing into the trees. The sound of the engine roared to life behind us. Suddenly, the ground beneath my feet felt like it was crumbling. This was real. And we were trapped. I turned to Jake and Evan, their faces as pale as mine. We have to get out of here. We can't just wait for them to. Before I could finish, the SUV headlights flashed again. Two men in dark clothing stepped out, faces masked like the woman's. Run, one of them said simply. Or we'll make you. And in that moment, I realized we didn't have a choice anymore. This wasn't about running for a little while until we got to safety. This was our new reality. The moment the masked figures stepped out of the SUV, my whole body went rigid. They didn't need to say anything more. It was clear what they were here for, to hunt us. Jake looked at me, wide-eyed. We have to move. Now. We didn't need any more convincing. Without a word, we turned and bolted into the woods, the sound of our heavy breathing and crashing footsteps blending with the growing roar of the engine behind us. But this wasn't a simple chase. No, this felt like prey being stalked. They weren't in a rush. They were taking their time, letting us think we had a chance to escape. But that was the cruel part. As we ran, the trees felt like they were closing in. The ground became uneven, my foot catching on roots and rocks as we scrambled forward. Every few seconds, I glanced over my shoulder, my heart slamming in my chest, expecting the SUV to burst through the trees or for one of the figures to leap out from the shadows. Nothing. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, we had some distance. Then I heard it. The whistle. It pierced the night like a knife. A long, drawn-out sound that was both a warning and a promise. They're coming. Evan whispered it, as if we hadn't already figured that out. but the panic in his voice made it real. We weren't just running for our lives. We were running for our freedom. We picked up the pace, pushing ourselves harder than I thought possible. But every turn, every branch we swatted out of the way, felt like it was leading us further into a maze we couldn't escape. Then, I caught a glimpse of movement ahead, shadows darting between the trees. "They're here," I breathed, my chest tight with dread. "Just keep moving," Jake hissed, but his voice was shaky. We rounded a bend in the path, and that's when I saw them, more of them. At least 4 figures, standing in our way. They were wearing the same dark clothes, the same masks. And they were waiting for us. It was like we were running straight into the hands of the hunting party. And that's when I understood there was no winning. There was only survival. We were cornered. The figures in front of us didn't move. They just stood there, their presence almost unnervingly calm, as if they were in control of everything. The sound of our panting and the rustling leaves felt deafening in the silence that hung between us. I could hear Jake's ragged breath beside me. Evan looked ready to bolt in the other direction, but I knew there was nowhere to go. Nowhere to hide. One of the figures in front of us stepped forward. He was taller than the others, with a broad frame. His mask was slightly cracked, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of his eyes, a cold, emotionless stare. "You've run enough," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "It's time to finish this." My blood ran cold. We were out of time. Before I could think of any way to react, one of the others stepped to the side, revealing a net and a trap that was already set up. I hadn't even seen it before. The edges of the net were camouflaged among the leaves, blending in with the underbrush. They must have set it up while we were running. "Don't bother," the man in front said, his voice a near whisper now. "We've been doing this a lot longer than you think." And that's when I realized I wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. We were being tracked. I glanced around again, my heart pounding harder now. The masked figures were closing in, slowly, methodically, their eyes locked on us like they were savoring the hunt. I swallowed hard. "What do you want from us?" The words barely left my lips before I regretted saying anything at all. "You still don't get it, do you?" The figure nearest me chuckled, though it sounded more like a sneer than laughter. "You were never meant to survive this. You were meant to play the game. To see how long you last. To entertain us." "Entertain you?" I spat, my voice hoarse. "Yeah." His eyes gleamed. "See, we don't need to kill you yet. We just need to see how much you'll fight. How far you'll go. You're part of the show now." The world around me started to feel like it was closing in, and I couldn't breathe. It wasn't a game. It was a hunting sport, and we were the prey. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I heard a rustling noise from behind us. I turned to see Evan, his eyes wild with fear, starting to climb the nearest tree. "No!" I shouted, grabbing his ankle before he could go too high. "They'll see you, you can't." But it was too late. The figures noticed him and began to advance, their steps quickening. Then, just as I thought it was all over, I heard something else. A sound of movement. And it wasn't us. A car engine. Another vehicle. The roar of the engine cut through the air like a lifeline, snapping me out of the trance I'd fallen into. For a second, I couldn't process what was happening. The figures in front of us paused, glancing toward the sound. I felt a flicker of hope, maybe, just maybe, we weren't completely alone. The masked figures didn't move, but I could see the tension in their posture. They weren't in control anymore. Whoever was in that vehicle was. I turned to Jake and Evan, both of them equally confused, adrenaline still pulsing through our veins. We had no idea who was coming, but for the first time since this nightmare started, it felt like we might have a chance. The headlights broke through the trees, cutting through the darkness. And then, from the shadows, a sleek black SUV came into view, its tires kicking up dust as it skidded to a halt in front of us. The door opened slowly. I couldn't make out who was inside, just the silhouette of a person stepping out, silhouetted against the headlights. But I saw enough to know they weren't here to play games. The figure walked toward us with purpose, their silhouette tall and commanding. The others started shifting, nervous, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. One of the figures in front of us, the one who'd spoken earlier, stepped forward. We weren't expecting company. His voice was tight, almost nervous. The newcomer didn't respond. They simply stood still for a moment, sizing up the situation. Then, in a voice that cut through the tension like a knife, they spoke. "You're done here." And with that, they reached into their jacket. My heart skipped a beat. Were they going to shoot? Instead, they pulled out a small, sleek device and pointed it toward the figures in front of us. A red light flickered, and suddenly, the group of masked hunters froze in place. A low hum filled the air as the device emitted a pulse that seemed to paralyze them. "What the hell is this?" one of the hunters muttered, trying to move but failing. The newcomer turned to us, offering a small nod. "Get in the car." It wasn't a request. It was an order. We didn't hesitate. We were running on pure instinct now, not stopping to question why or how this person was saving us. We just knew we had to take the opportunity and run. Jake was the first to scramble into the back seat, followed by Evan. I didn't even wait for the door to fully shut before I jumped in, slamming it behind me. The car lurched forward, and for a second, I thought I might actually get a chance to breathe again. But the figures in the woods, still frozen in place, weren't the only danger we had to worry about. As we drove away, I glanced back. Through the trees, I saw another vehicle approaching, just as ominous, just as ready. We hadn't escaped. Not yet.